Hello, my name is Alicja Świerczek. I'm the European Affairs and Program Manager at ECSA, the European Composer and Songwriter Alliance. We're based in Brussels, Belgium, and we represent 30,000 composers and songwriters all over Europe. And I was supposed to hold this presentation at the Inferno Music Conference, as you know, but due to the COVID-19 pandemic, everything got cancelled. So I'm staying here in Brussels, and through digital means, I hope you can enjoy my presentation anyway. So I was supposed to talk about how to make your growl heard through Songwriter Associations. And this is the part of your profession that is not connected to the creative part of writing songs and performing them. I'm going to talk about everything but this. Well, not everything, but the side of the business that is not connected to the creative part of your profession. So you may be well aware about authors' rights, royalties, money coming from streaming services, collecting societies. You may have heard about them. And I'm sure at some point in your career you have wondered, where is the money? I have so many streams, I have so many clicks, but somehow it's not generating enough revenue for me. You may think some things are unfair. You may wonder how things work in the music business. And there are certain services who can provide you with some answers on how to check your author's rights, or how to look into contracts, or how to check the income statement from collecting societies. But if there are things that are unfair, those services are not the places to bring your concerns to. You can bring them to songwriter associations. They are there to monitor the situation in the music business, in the music sector. They look into the developments, not just what's happening in the sector, but also what's happening on a policy level. So are there any laws that are going to be proposed that will have an impact on you? And they keep you informed, and they are the right address for making your growl heard. With growl, I mean complaints. And just to make sure, I'm not talking about collecting societies. They call themselves sometimes author societies, and they're not what I'm going to talk about here, because collecting societies like Tuno in Norway, or GEMA in Germany, or SACEM in France, or PRS in the UK, they are businesses that collect royalties and distribute them back to the artists. And they're not just authors there, they're also publishers there. And when I talk about songwriter associations, I mean the members of ECSA. You can think of them as unions, but they're not unions because of some legal aspects. I'm not going to get into that here, but think of them as associations that represent your rights and your interests. So most European countries have those songwriter associations, and they exist solely for the purpose of promoting the economic and social interest of composers and songwriters. And what are they doing? They monitor legislative developments on a national level, and they also represent the voice of the composers and songwriters in that country in front of national governments and policymakers, and they represent them no matter what genre. So I work for ECSA, which is the European umbrella organization of all these associations. Not all of them, but over 60 associations in Europe. And we represent the economic and social interests of composers and songwriters in front of the European institutions. And we as well monitor the legislative developments as well as the international music sector. And we're trying to have roundtables and meetings with stakeholders in order to change the situation for composers and songwriters for the better, of course. But if this is not possible on a stakeholder level, we try to initiate new law. And in short, this is what ECSA is doing. So our members are doing the same on a local level. And by joining a Songwriter Association, you may benefit not just from their projects and awards, competitions and workshops that they are providing, but you may also benefit from the information they have on current developments in the music sector. For example, right now in this COVID-19 crisis, our members are also doing something. They are compiling, well, they have different initiatives, and I'm just going to name a few of them. So they're compiling all the information where you can get the hardship money or where you can get any kind of funding to get through this difficult time. They are listing, for example, digital collaboration tools, so you can still make music from home with other composers, songwriters, or musicians. One of our members has set up a database where they have composers and songwriters be connected to performers who have their own recording studios at home, so they can actually still record music during that time. And another member of ours is developing a platform where artists can actually perform in front of their audiences and get directly paid for it. If you want to have a look at other initiatives our members are doing, then please go on the ECSA homepage, which is www.composeralliance.org. And I want to shift your attention to something for a moment. And this is the current situation and what artists and venues are doing right now. They have these wonderful initiatives where they present their performances, where they give concerts online for free. And it's wonderful, and it's really something that's necessary for the people who are stuck at home. However, it will not get the artists paid. So the only ones who are benefiting from these are actually those big platforms. So if you have a concert online and you put it on those big platforms, you will not get paid that much. Actually, the platform is the one who will get most of that money, because they get the money through the advertisement that is placed on the platform, and you will not get a fair share of this. Also, the venues who are now showing their concerts that they had in their facilities, some of them are asking the collecting societies to waive the fee that they would normally have to pay when showing concerts. So again, artists are not getting paid. A better alternative would be to go to those sites, to those websites, those pages, those digital platforms that are actually made for online concerts, because there fans can buy tickets to attend this online concert, and they can also tip the artist. So it's kind of like a better solution. It gets the artist paid, and it's a better deal overall. And let me also tell you what ECSA has been doing during this crisis. We have monitored what the European institutions are doing, and the EU has put up this COVID-19 relief fund, which they are going to distribute to the EU member states. And this money is supposed to go to the sectors that have been hit the hardest. So we made sure, together with other cultural stakeholders, that the music sector, the cultural sector, was included in those sectors that can benefit from this funding. So now it's up to the governments to distribute that funding on a national level. Additionally, we have asked that the future EU budget will have a bigger pot for culture, because this crisis has effects, will have future effects, and will impact the cultural sector even next year. We have asked to raise the budget for culture, especially for the music sector, so that those impacts of this current crisis can be mitigated somehow. But now I want to go to a different topic, and this is what have we done so far to help composers and songwriters. Have you heard about the European Union Copyright Directive? Well, copyright, it should ring a bell. Copyright, and for the artists and for the authors, this is better known as authors' rights here in Europe. So whenever you hear the term copyright, author's right, it should ring a bell and you should see some euro signs in front of your eyes. And if you don't, then you should have a manager who does. Whenever you create something, you create intellectual property. You generate copyright, or as an author, you create author's rights. So you have rights to it, and you can sell these rights. You can sell the exclusive usage of your creation, basically. So you can make money out of it. And I hope this makes you a little bit more attentive when I'm going to talk about the EU Copyright Directive right now. Just a disclaimer, it was adopted last year, but it will only be transposed into national law the latest next year, June. So it was adopted on the EU level, but still there are no effects yet, because EU member states have to see how they can actually integrate it into their current legislation, and what they have to change and how they can change legislation. So it's a process that's still ongoing. So before I go into the specifics, but only the specifics that are relevant to you as songwriter, as performer, I would like to outline a little bit what ECSA has been doing in this process. So the directive was proposed in 2016 by the European Commission in order for the European Parliament and the Council to negotiate on the final wording of the text. ECSA, however, has worked on this directive since 2014. We have worked with the European Commission in order to make the topic of contracts for authors and performers a topic within the directive. We raised awareness that for artists it is very hard to negotiate contracts on a fair basis. Usually it's on a take it or leave it approach. So we worked really hard to make European policymakers aware that it's an unfair situation right now and that it needs to be regulated by law. And so we succeeded, not just by having the topic in the EU Copyright Directive, but also keeping it in a beneficial manner. Because once the European Parliament and the Council have been negotiating, we had to stay vigilant and we had to monitor. We had to talk to European policymakers, to MEPs, the members of the European Parliament. We had to talk to representatives of the EU member states in order to make them aware that they had to keep the text beneficial for us. And I don't want to talk more about the process here, but let me assure you, it was more than just talking to a few politicians and just looking at the text. It was a lot of work. And we couldn't have done it without our members who supported us every step of the way. So now I'm going into the content of this copyright directive and the aspects that are going to be relevant for you. So you may have heard about the infamous Article 13 or the value gap. In short, this is an article that regulates who's liable for the content uploaded on a content sharing service platform if the content is not uploaded by the owner, the right holder of the content. So right now, the user is liable. The user, meaning the person who uses the platform. If that person uploads a video, a music video, he actually does not have the right to do so because who has the right? The right holder, who is either the publisher, the label, or the artist themselves. So basically, users are taking someone else's property and uploading it. And who makes money? The platforms. They're putting advertisements there and they get a chunk of the money. And they actually do not have to pay the artists because of different EU regulation. And I would like to give you an example. So if I take a song from Creator, for example, and I make a little video with my vacation pictures and I upload it on YouTube, then I have probably not asked Creator for permission nor paid Creator anything. So I am responsible for this content. However, YouTube is making money. I'm definitely not going to make any money unless there are millions and millions and millions of views. And will Creator get some money out of it? It depends what deals there are in place. If Creator has a good label that has made a deal directly with YouTube, they may get some money. Sometimes there are deals with collecting societies, and then you get some money as well. But YouTube was never forced to negotiate any deals for the usage of the music. So right now, the money that you get, well, it's not a big share nor a fair share. So there is a gap in the value for the music. YouTube gets, in this example, YouTube gets most of the revenues generated by the content that I created, but that actually contains content from someone else. So I put my pictures there, but actually I'm using music and I did not create that music. And every time music is being used, unless it's open source, it has to be authorized and it has to be paid for. So right now, Creator can sue me. Just to make sure I don't have any kind of videos on YouTube like this. So what will change with this copyright directive? So once this is implemented into national law, then YouTube has to go to the right holders and negotiate licenses. This means there will be fair negotiations and there should be more money coming back to the artists. And looks good, no? And this means that users will not be held liable anymore. So I can upload my video with the music of Creator. Creator gets paid fairly and I'm not responsible for it, in the sense that I am not liable for it. Then there are other regulations in the copyright directive that have a big impact, that will have a big impact on you, and they concern the contracts that you're going to make as an author or performer. And there are 5 provisions on the contracts, and I try to keep them as simple as possible for you to understand. I don't know who's going to listen to this presentation. Normally, if you were in the room, I would kind of ask you what your previous knowledge is, but I'll try to make it quick and painless. Article 18 is the principle of appropriate and proportionate remuneration. What does this mean? It means whenever an author or performer transfers their exclusive right to someone who's exploiting their work, so to a publisher or to a label, they should receive appropriate and proportionate remuneration. You should get a fair amount of money for the use of this work, of your work. Again, it's not like, it's only a principle, so EU member states will have some sort of leeway how they're going to make this into law, and we'll have to see, because as I said, the EU member states have still some time to actually transpose the EU copyright directive into national law. Then there's another article, Article 19, about the transparency obligation. So this article introduces a transparency obligation for the contractual counterparts of authors and performers, meaning if an author and performer has transferred the right to the work to a publisher or a label, they are now allowed to get information on how much the use of that work made in money. So how much revenue was generated by the exploitation of your work. And you can get this information once per year, and which is a good thing, because it will show you how much money there is generated with the works that you have created. And once the contract is over, or if you have the opportunity to get into different deals or other contracts, you can then point at this and say, look, I made so and so much money, so I want a better deal. So this kind of transparency obligation serves as bargaining tool for the next contracts. And I just want to highlight that this provision is going to take effect only a year later. So, I mean, you can only ask for this information as of June 2022. So in 2 years, more or less. And then I'm going to the next article, which is the contract adjustment mechanism. This article is sometimes referred to as the bestseller clause, and it gives you the right to claim additional, appropriate, and fair remuneration in case your work becomes a massive success. And again, it only takes effect in the cases where you transferred the exclusive right to the exploitation of your work. Then another article is the article on the alternative dispute resolution procedure. This is about setting up alternative dispute resolution mechanism that's voluntary, and where this transparency obligation and this bestseller clause can be negotiated in case you cannot make a a fair deal, or in case you cannot get the information. So you as the artist and your contractual counterpart, when you're a songwriter, it's the publisher, you go in front of these, you go into this dispute resolution mechanism, and there you should be able to settle differences that you have when it comes to the contract adjustment mechanism. When you think you are entitled to get more money, then, and the publisher or the label are saying no, then you can go there and ask for a resolution of this dispute, of this problem. Then there's Article 22, the right of revocation, which means that if you transfer the exclusive right to your work to someone else to exploit, and they do not exploit it, they don't use it, they just keep it sitting in their archives, they don't do anything with it, after a certain period of time, you can actually revoke the exclusivity of that deal, which means they can still exploit it, but since they have not so far, you're able to use your work as well, which means you can give it to another publisher, you can give it to, yes, you can give it to another publisher, you can use it again, but they can also still use it. Then there is Article 23 about common provisions. This article ensures that all the articles I just mentioned stay relevant, and that there is nothing, that there cannot be anything in your contract stating that you are not allowed to use these articles. For example, if you get into a contract where it states that you waive your right for an annual information on the revenues, so you waive the right for transparency, then you can leave it in the contract. It will not be valid. This provision will not be valid. So you will still have the right to ask for information once per year. So overall, in some European countries, there are already laws that are very similar to these articles that I just mentioned, but in other countries, they're not. So it's a way of leveling up the playing field for all of Europe and for all European authors and performers. And as I already said, European member states have until next year, June 2021, to adopt this legislation. And until then, ECSA and our members were staying vigilant that these articles are being transposed into national law in a beneficial manner. So this is the EU Copyright Directive. I mean, it looks good, no? But I want to divert your attention to another topic that we were actually working on, which is a little bit on hold right now due to the COVID-19 crisis. But we were also working on the revenues coming from streaming services. You know that the digital, I mean, I don't know if you know, but if you have been in the business for, well, before Spotify, you know that the digital music consumption transferred the revenue streams for songwriters drastically. Unfortunately, not in a good way. And the reason for this is that the deals that those streaming services made with the labels do not benefit songwriters that much. Those deals, that determined who gets what percentage of a stream. So, I mean, everyone's kind of involved. So label, performers, songwriters, publishers, they're all involved in getting money from a stream. And the deals that were negotiated in the beginning, they kind of outlined the percentage of those, of the share that one gets in a stream. So these deals directly impact your income that you get from the streaming services. And right now there is the discussion about user-centric distribution versus pro rata distribution. And you may say, what are these words? And let me explain to you. So let's say for a month, I have a subscription at the streaming service, and for a month, I listen only to Mayhem. The money that I pay for the subscription will get not completely to Mayhem. So because the streaming services pay out on a share basis, if, let's say, in a month, Taylor Swift has been the most listened to artist, she will get the share of the whole revenue that came in that month. So the big players get a big pie of the money that is being distributed from the streaming services, and the artists that are being less listened to, they get a smaller share. And right now there is a discussion of having a change in the distribution of the revenues, and this new model is called user-centric. So I listen for 1 month to Mayhem only, then Mayhem should get the money that I pay with my subscription fee. So none of it goes to Taylor Swift, everything goes to Mayhem, minus the administration fees of Spotify, and then minus the administration fees of whatever label or digital aggregator you're using. So this is interesting, no? But unfortunately, this is a long process, and we're seeing what we can do in this field. But again, we're working to have more money in the pockets of the composers and songwriters. So needless to say, all these initiatives, all these things we're doing with our members, with Songwriter Associations. And we can only do this because they have come together in a structured manner, and they collect the opinions and the experiences of their members, which are the songwriters. And then they tell us about their struggles, so we can go to the European Union and tell them, look, there is a problem here, there is a problem with contracts, there's a problem with streaming services. So because we have our members, because our members listen to their members, we can do the work that we're doing right now. And if you are not a member and you don't tell them your problems, you don't tell them where you see unfair practices in your genre, then we cannot know about this and we cannot try and change it. So this is in brief the way we work and how you can be involved in it. Just become a member, just talk to your Songwriter Association and make yourself heard, and they will take your opinion and experiences in consideration, and together we can actually change the situation by, first of all, raising awareness in society, but also with policymakers, which then leads to changes in legislation. And this is actually what I wanted to say. And normally I would like to have some feedback, some questions. However, this is not possible in a direct manner. So if you have any questions, don't hesitate to go on the ECSA homepage, composeralliance.org, and look for contact, and then you can always contact me if you have any other questions. And if you feel you have questions for me, otherwise I would refer you to your National Songwriter Association. If you need help finding them, you can also find them on our homepage. And I would like to thank you for watching my presentation. I hope it was interesting for you, and hopefully I see you next year at the Inferno Music Conference or the Inferno Festival. Until then, stay safe and make music at home. Thank you.